Welcome to Voice Notes from the Organized Homeschool. JeTua, I'm so excited to have you here, a part of the podcast, and can't wait to learn from you and just share about you and your homeschool and all of the great things. So let's jump right in by you introducing yourself, sharing a little bit about your background, sharing about a little bit overview about your homeschool, like how old your children are, how long you've been homeschooling, what type of homeschool you have, anything you feel comfortable. We'll start there.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I've been listening on Substack and I have really enjoyed hearing the episodes. My name is JeTua Amos. I am a native Mississippian. I'm a wife and I'm a mother to 4 boys. I was a middle school science teacher and I loved it. I loved it. I loved being with my children. I loved being a science teacher. I love seeing their faces light up when they actually got it, when it clicked in their minds. And somewhere along the lines, my mind started changing toward the system, the education system, when I was seeing things that was going on behind the scenes as an educator. And so I quit in 2013 and I began to homeschool my own children. And so I have 4 boys. They range in ages. This year, they all will be 12, 15, 18, and 19 years old. And I began to homeschool them in 2013. And my older two were actually in school. They were in fourth and second grade consecutively. And I pulled them out and I began to teach them at home. And so my homeschool style will be described as eclectic. So we don't really stick with anything, but we also have a strong traditional schooling background. We have a strong traditional schooling background. And that comes from my former education as a teacher. So I do have a bachelor's degree in science and biology, and I have a master of arts in teaching in elementary education.
Okay, so I feel like we're the same because I was also a teacher and a principal, which you probably know if you've been listening to the podcast. Yay, thank you for listening. But I feel you on like, my opinion on the system is not as bright and positive as it was when I was like a young new teacher, in Atlanta, just so excited decorating my classroom, right? Like, it's so sad. The system is so broken. It like just kills the soul of young teachers, and then great teachers leave because it's just not working. And I have no bad feelings about the people in the system because I was one of them for over a decade, and everybody's working so hard, like so hard, trying to do what's best for every single child, and it's just nearly impossible. Like it just really is. Let's just be honest. Like, how can one person give every child what they really need at every given moment the way that you can now with 4 boys with one of you? Like, it's just the ratio's off. And that's just one challenge, is the ratio. So I feel you so much on that. Okay, I have so many questions. I'm really excited to dig in. My first question, though, is because your kids are, one of them's about to be a grown-up. I guess is a grown-up, 18. Like, that's an adult, technically. But when they started fourth and fifth grade, how did they feel about coming home to homeschool? How was that transition for you all? And then if you have anything more to say about your why, I'm making a lot of assumptions when you said, like, your thoughts about the system changed. And so I'm assuming that's mostly why you chose to homeschool. But if there was any other reasons too, definitely share that. And then let's talk about the transition, especially like how your kids felt about it because they were a little older.
Okay, so I'm glad we have common ground as far as the public school system. So you said that you were a teacher and then you were also a principal. And I'm glad that you can see things on both sides of the spectrum. And I'm saying this because sometimes when teachers turn into administrators, it's like they forget that they were actually teachers at one point in time, right? So it's like you forgot how it felt not to have a lunch break. It's like you forgot how it felt to have people come into your room and say, oh, you need more posters on your room, when children are not even paying attention to what's on the walls. And you just want to teach. You just want to teach. You want to go in, and this passion that you have for your students, this passion that you have for your subject, as I did for science, I just want to have fun with my children. I don't want to be bogged down with a lot of paperwork and everything. I just want to teach. So that's my thought on. Now, as far as me going back to my why, a lot of my whys did come from like frustration with the administration, not having really support as a teacher with when students had discipline problems and they would get sent right back to my classroom. And it's like they are disrupting the learning process. Could you please help? And actually, when I turned in my 2 week notice for the last school that I worked at, my principal actually, he avoided me. And so I would try to catch him and he would try to avoid talking to me. And when I finally cornered him one day, he was like, "Oh, I thought you forgot." And I did not forget. But it is not the teachers for the most part. Like you said, we don't look down on anybody. We don't think bad about them, because I know there's this thing with homeschooling versus public school teachers or whatnot. We all want our children to learn. We all want the best for them. And are there bad apples on each side? Yes. Yes. So we can give balance there. But when I started to see more disciplinary problems, it's like it started to become a burden on me. And my husband had actually shown me a video, and it was like this family that were going around on the school bus and they were just talking about the school system. And I was like, "You want me to homeschool our children? Homeschool?" It's like, that's the weird children. And oh my goodness, did we not all, or some of us, think that? And I grossly repent and take that back. But it was what you thought that homeschooling was. And the sad part is I had a master's degree, Erica. Like, I'm teaching other people's kids every day. And when it comes to my children, I'm kind of second guessing myself with all the education, and I have student loan debt to prove it. But when it comes to teaching mine, I'm like, can I do this? So my husband showed me the video and I began to kind of pray about it. I began to pray, and I felt that once I began to pray that God actually showed me what is going on. That's when it's like my eyes were open to a lot of things. That's when I gave the 2 weeks notice in and I quit. But before I actually quit that school, when I worked at a previous school, I felt like one day I may homeschool, because my husband had been talking to me about it for years. And I was the lead teacher on my team. And so I had a printer in my classroom. And when we get our EP money, they would tell us that we need to buy our own pack of paper because the school was not providing paper for the teachers to make copies. And that's a whole nother subject. But I would find PDF books online and I would print them out because I knew one day I may homeschool, because my husband, he was really, really adamant about, he believed it was going to be time for us to homeschool one day. So I would print out the PDF books. I would print out anything going on with homeschooling or, other resources that would help. And actually, our school had pacing guides where it shows you, for those of you who are listening, don't know what a pacing guide is, it's basically for your subject, the school will print out the dates and what objectives you are to be teaching, even to with the book, what pages you need to be on. And so you have to hit these different objectives by these dates. You really couldn't go past it. You didn't have too much margin of error to stay on one thing too long. And so when I saw the pacing guides, I also printed those out so that if I taught my kids, I would use the pacing guides to kind of have a guide to how to teach my children and what they need to be taught. And so I told you that my older two were fourth and second grade consecutively when I pulled them out. Now, my husband is their stepfather. So for those of you who are co-parenting, I had to make sure that I had permission from their dads to be able to homeschool. And so that also took a process. So once they said, yes, I give permission, then that gave me the green light to go ahead and homeschool the other two. And so when they came home, there wasn't too much of an adjustment because of my teaching background. I used the traditional method to homeschool. So it was basically like schooling at home, where we had the textbooks and where I would sit and teach them. And then it came to be eclectic, where there were some days we would be have intensive learning sessions with workbooks and textbooks. But then sometimes my teacher would say, you know what, how do you make this or how do you make that? And we would watch YouTube videos and we would create certain things as well. And when I took my older two out of school, like I said, they were in the fourth and second grades. It was easier because we were in the neighborhood where there were other kids, and I would take them to the reading days at the local library. And that's where I began to find community. That's where I began to see other parents that were there with children at the same time. And I was like, they should be at work. And that's when I found a link to other homeschool families. And so here in Mississippi, we have a large homeschool community. It's called the Christian Home Educators Connection, or CHEC, CHEC. And one of the parents, she invited me to join, and we joined, and I would take my children to events. And they have a calendar. And when you look on this calendar, you see almost every day of the week, there is something, well, several activities each month where you can just take your children. If you want to do park days where they just go and play with other kids just so they can, socialize. And then you find other friends and other moms who may have the same questions, worries, fears, concerns as you do. And then you slowly start learning other people, how they homeschool, and you begin to grow your community. So now your children, since you know you're going to do this for an X amount of years, now your children can grow up with other close friends just like children would if they were in a public school environment, except it's, you have a closer relationship with this parent and you can see them interact in real time instead of at school. You really don't know their friends. You don't know how they act. You know what I mean? You can only trust your child's judgment. And so we began to do the park days, and then we would see different events like field trips, and I would always take my children on those field trips. And it got to the point where my husband, he said, you need to choose at least 2 or 3 events a month because gas money. So I know a lot of people think children are not socialized as homeschool students, but they are. And it is so much that you do that you forget, okay, we got to go home and do some work because we have been at park days, we have been at pizza parties, we have went bowling, we went skating. And that's the best thing too. Like here in Mississippi, there's a local skating rink company, and the person who owns the skating rink, he allows homeschool students to come on a certain day, and then they get a discounted rate to skate. And all the children just go and hang out. So all the parents are in one, which are pretty much moms. They're all in one spot. And then all the children are just hanging out with their friends, because you don't have to, if there's no entrance fee. You only pay if you skate. So most of them just come in just to hang out with their friends. So that was great too, to see my children really interact with the other children and see that homeschooling is not bad, and it's not them just in my house all day with a workbook and a pencil. As of today, this year, as I said before, my children will be 12, 15, 18, and 19. My oldest son, he is a college freshman. He just finished his freshman year, so in August he will be going back for his sophomore year. He's also in honors college. I let him go live with his dad his 11th grade year. So he went in and he had honor roll each year. He graduated with honors. And so again, he's in honors college at the college that he attends. And so I'm happy about that because, some people think that we are just at home and let our children watch Sesame Street all day. And that's not true. We actually homeschool our children. We actually educate them. And my second oldest son, he also went to live with his father his freshman year in high school, and he will be graduating this year, and he's going to go to a local college here as well. My 14-year-old, who will be 15, he is enrolled in dual enrollment, so he's enrolled in a community college, and so he starts his program in August. And then I have one going to the 7th grade. This summer, we have been doing, for the younger two who still live here, we have been doing summer school. And I always try to make sure we do math and reading. With reading, I just take them to the local library. They love to read. They always check out like 5 or 6 books at minimum and come home and read those. And I try to make sure that they don't lose anything with their math skills, because I know math is like a low point among some children. And so I want them to continue to sharpen those skills and not lose anything over the summer. And I want people to know that along with the activities that I was allowing my children to participate in, they were also in sports. They were on a local basketball team that the homeschool check that I told you about, that community. They have several different sports teams. And so they were in a basketball team. And let me tell you something. This is not like high school, public high school, where they have a bus and the children just get on the bus and then we just drop them off and we come. No, we parents, we have to pay for the hotel rooms, we have to pay for the gas, we have to pay interest fees, we have to pay, it's more out of pocket fees. And so, there is there's something you miss about if your child had been in high school. But they went on to tournaments, we went out of state travel. It was a great time. It was a great time. And so there are a lot of activities that your children can be involved in when you're homeschooling. The oldest that's here, who's going to be 15 this year, he is not in sports at this moment, but the one in 7th grade, he is in chess. So he loves to play chess. He's the only one in the house who knows how to play. I tried to teach myself. I cannot grasp the concept, but he's really good at it. And so there are so many activities. We have archery. They have cross country, they have track. They even teach them how to do shotguns, how to shoot those. They have Civil Air Patrol, which is basically like the JRTC. They have several different activities and the children just enjoy.
Okay, JeTua, this is all so good. And nope, we just, as things come to you, share just the way you did. That's completely perfect. That's exactly what we're doing. And what is so sad about what you shared with like the whole school stuff is like your experience is not abnormal or not unique. Like it's happening in so many places. And, just to stand up a little bit for the principals and the leaders. And I know there's so many people who could be doing so much better in their role. And the same way, like teachers have struggles, leaders have struggles too. And that's why my whole thing is like, it's the system. Like I was in a teacher role, I was in a leader role, I was in network roles at charter school, and everyone was trying to do their best and do the best that they could, make the best decisions they could for both the adults and the children in the school. And it's like, it's just broken. It's not set up to support the number of children in one space. It's just a lot of issues. And so I totally feel you. And yeah, it's really sad that that is the reality. But I'm glad your husband was like just kind of planting the seed, putting it in your ear. It sounds like for maybe even a couple of years about homeschooling, and you were able to make that leap when it made sense for you. I love how you talked about how you built the community for your kids. And I meant to start with this. Congratulations, 2 in college and 2 more to go, and 1 in dual enrollment. That's amazing. I definitely want to talk about like the transition to high school. Well, it sounded like they both transitioned to high school and graduated from high school, so they probably had transcripts from high school versus having to create transcripts for them. So, but tell me if I'm wrong, if there was some like difference that you had to do than maybe the other high schoolers had to do to help them get into college. But love how you built the community. You went to the library, and it's so funny because I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, so whoever's at the park on a random Tuesday at 11 a.m., that means that they're not at school. So they're probably a homeschooler. So I'm just going to introduce myself and we're going to be friends or see if it makes sense for us to be friends. So I am the same way. And I'm laughing at you being like, your husband had to be like, listen, so much gas because you're all over the place. Like, let's sit down and do some work in the house. So it's real. Like you can really get caught up on like, okay, Monday we're going here, Tuesday we're going here, Wednesday we have this outing, Thursday was co-op, Friday is friends. It can quickly become like 4 to 5 days a week where you're leaving the house and you're like, wait, what is going on? So that's so funny. And I definitely can relate. Okay, so let's switch gears to talk about planning. We'll come back to other things like graduation and stuff, but like what does planning look like for you? You can talk about it now. You're planning for 2 children. And what did it look like when you had all 4 homeschooling? How did you plan your lessons? How did you stay organized with the academics of 4 different grade levels too?
So just to give correction, I have one that just finished up his freshman year in college, and then I have one that is a senior in high school who would be graduating this year that's going to college. And then I have one that is still homeschooled who is enrolled in dual enrollment, and he will be heading to college in the fall, starting in August, for a dual enrollment program because he wants to take up culinary arts. So the one in that's the senior in high school, he hasn't started yet, but he will be graduating. So it's on the horizon, like we can see it. So when it comes to planning, I went to discoveryk12.com. That was one of the best curriculums and introduction to homeschool for me. Discover K-12 had lessons every day for your child. You would go in, create a free account, and you would search their grade level, and it would have everything that they would need to be taught. And sometimes I would find basically a summary list of everything by grade and by subject area that they would need to be taught for that year. And that's how I built my curriculum around the skills that needed to be taught this for their grade level. So if it said phonics, then I would Google search phonics for my children at that age, and then we would use those. I would print out materials, PDFs. If it talked about measurement, then I would find different things around the house to teach my children how to use a ruler. And sometimes I would do the old-fashioned game where we would just keep folding a paper in half, and then we would fold it in half again, and then we would measure it out to say, okay, this is how a ruler is measured. This is a whole ruler, then this indentation, this dent in the paper would mean that this is half. So you have two equal sides. And then we would fold it in half again. We would put again the little grade, we would grade it so that it would have the marks and they would understand how to read a ruler through that. So that's how I would create my curriculum, and that's how I would plan for the school year. Now, I also looked on the local school districts websites, and I would look and see what their schedule would be for the year, and I planned that our schedule around the local schools. And so what do I mean by that? Of course, the state recommends 180 days. And so we will plan our holidays basically around their holidays. And that was also because I have a nephew who lives nearby, and we have family that lives nearby. And so when they're on breaks, if we want to spend breaks together, then our children will also be on breaks for school as well. I keep everything in a binder, and I use the binder so that if I want to reference things that my older children used, then I can use that for my younger children. The binders, I also would print out lesson planning pages because, of course, as a previous teacher, I knew how to write lesson plans. We would write the objective, would write with how we would engage, what materials I would use, and everything. And so it would just give me an extra resource just in case I was sick, that my husband, he could come in and he could see it word for word, and he would also know what is supposed to be done that day. It is a part of accountability as well, to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I like for things to be in order. Mississippi has laws that are really lax right now for homeschool parents and families. And so at any time, the laws could be changed. And if they want to have any proof that my children were actually being taught, I would have this binder here to show these are the lessons, this is how rigorous our curriculum was, and this is the proof. I even keep report cards, I keep grades, attendance. And so there were years ago, I found a website where she was also a homeschool mom, and she had a planner that she was selling, and it was like free, or it was like really low cost. And so I bought that, and I still have the paperwork saved on my computer. And so each year, all I do is just print out the grade sheets so that I can keep actual grades for my children. Because, of course, when I was a teacher, we were told that the grades were actually, legal, like it's some type of legal measure or anything, like it's a legal document, and audit or try to see what the grades were, then we have proof to show. So I have grades for my children. I keep those. I also keep a binder for each of them. Okay. So, like I said, I would plan according to what my older children had. And then I would also keep a binder of their work from that previous year. So I would tell them to keep samples, because some of the colleges and universities here in Mississippi, if you're a homeschool, they would like to see a binder of your work to see what type of work was being done. But that's how I plan. Look and see what is needed, and then I go and research, and then say, okay, this is a resource that I can use for this objective. This is a resource that I can use for that. As far as my children going into college, for the ones who entered into high school, I kept a transcript at home, and I created my own transcript. And when he enrolled into high school, there were no problems because everything was legit, everything was right there. Now, as far as the child that is dual enrolled, I had to do something a little different with his transcript. This time I had to have a place for a notary to notarize it and have their stamp on the transcript. And so I listed his courses, I listed the number of credit hours, I also listed the number grade and the letter grade, and it's unweighted. And so I gave that to the college counselor. She checked it over. She said, hey, this is perfect. And she accepted it. And so he was accepted into the college. Now, I do want parents to know that it is very important to keep track, because, the years go by and we kind of get lax and we say we'll do it later, but you have to keep account of the transcript and what your child is learning. And I actually will create transcripts for parents as for a fee, and that's why I have Amos Homeschool Consulting, and that's part of my business, to create professional transcripts for those who are enrolling their children into college, or if they feel like, hey, homeschooling did not work for me, but I want to place my child back into the public school system, you will have a transcript that will make their high school counselor job a little easier. I do have people that I know that are high school counselors, and they say that sometimes they enroll their children back into public schools, the homeschool parents, and they have nothing to show. They have nothing to say, my child did this, and they have to test the children. They have to go through all these protocols to get them enrolled in the right grade. Also, when it comes to planning, when two of my children were enrolled in college, I'm going to just talk about the one who's dual enrolled. I did basically backward research. I looked at what courses were required for the public universities or private universities and colleges in Mississippi, saw what the requirements for to enter in as a freshman, and I worked backwards from that. So if it said that they needed 4 maths, then I would make sure that my child had 4 maths on the transcript, or whatever many maths needed. If there were 3 sciences, then I would do his scheduling according to what was required by the state. And so that would make it easier for him to still be on the same level as the other students without going into remedial courses when he got into school. Another part of my planning, I always wanted my children to make sure that they had fun with homeschooling. So every year I make t-shirts. So I have a silhouette machine. So every year I make t-shirts that said, okay, game's over, or a new level unlocked. I'm entering in 7th grade. Like, that's one of the shirts that I made for one of my children. So I do that. And I also create school IDs. And so when we go places, let's say we go on a field trip, or we are with the other homeschool communities on a field trip, and not a personal trip with just my husband and my children, going to a museum, we all have our IDs hanging around our necks on lanyards. And so that's a fun thing to say. You can have certain things that people have in public school as well. If they have IDs, we can have IDs as well. And it helps, especially if there are little treats that's being given, like if a child has to have an ID to get free ice cream or something, then we can show that for our children. So I want to tell you this neat website that I found years ago, and this also helps me plan for the new year when my husband and I are planning for the classes for our children. I go to this site, and I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's gizmoa.com. GIZMOA.com. And I'm going to send you the link so that those who are listening can look for it as well. But what we do is we sit down with our children, we ask them what courses they would like to take or what they're interested in. And I see how it fits into the grand scheme of things, like, is it going to be a mandatory course? Is it going to be classified as an elective on a transcript if they are in high school? And so then me and my husband, we get together, we talk about what days would be best for each subject. Are we going to do block scheduling? Are we just going to do regular scheduling? And usually we do blocks, like Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, we do certain subjects, and then Tuesday and Thursday, we do certain subjects. And so all you have to do is go into this website, and it is totally free. You type in the names of your subjects, and you can type in the teacher name as well, I believe. And then you type in, you set the time that each courses are going to be given for that week. And then you print it out, and so they get excited about that, because I'm like, okay, I have your schedules. These are the classes that you're going to take for this year. And so that's just a little happy, just so they can still have that real school feeling, because I don't want them to ever think that this is not real school. Like when people ask, do you go to school? No, we don't go to real school. We homeschool. It's like, no, this is really school. You're still learning the same thing. You're still getting a good quality education. Not many people involved, but you're still getting the same perks as they get in a public education system. So again, the name of the schedule maker is gizmoa.com. Also, when it comes to planning, I have to see how rigorous the courses would be for me as well. So yes, I have a master's degree. My undergrad is in biology, but those courses I took about 20 years ago, right? And so I have to see, okay, like for an example, this year, my son who's going to the 10th grade, the one who's dual enrolled, he's taking. So that means I have to go and look at the textbooks that we will be using in any online services, and see, okay, how can I refresh my memory? Because I have to teach myself before I teach them. I went all the way up to calculus, but again, if you hadn't seen it in 20 years, it gets kind of rusty. So I have to refresh my mind as well. And that's a good way in planning for the courses to see, what are we going to outsource this year and pay extra for, or what are we going to continue to keep in-house? Because there are a lot of sources that you can use, even if you don't know that you can pay for an online program. If you don't feel like, okay, going to one of the co-ops and asking one of the parents, paying the parents to do it, you say, you know what, I feel like he can learn more from this teaching style. Because Khan Academy, oh, I believe we all have heard of that. If not, it's an excellent source. It's on YouTube. Everything is free. Of course, there are a lot of math teachers on YouTube, and you can just Google, you know, how to teach geometry, and then you will have a whole slew of videos that will come up. So that's another part of planning. Will I need to refresh my memory on this? Will this come easily? Or do I need to outsource? So parents need to keep that in consideration as well. So another part of planning is making sure that my children also volunteer. I think that it makes them well-rounded individuals. It makes them, more grateful. And then it shows the grace that we have for others, because we don't know their story, right? That we cannot be lifted up in pride. We are no better than anyone else. But when you have a chance to help someone, you do it. And so we were volunteering at a church and at their food pantry, and we would go, and there were other families that served as well, and they would, you know put up the cans, put up the foods. If a delivery came that night before, we would put them on the shelves, and then we would also take food out and place it into the trunks of the cars of those who came by. So the parents, we would go and do the interviews and make sure we mark off the names for the people who were the regulars, and if it was somebody new, we would have to sign them up. With the children, they would always put the bags in the cars for them, and oh, they loved it when they saw the young people coming and volunteering. They were like, oh, you raised them right. And it always makes your heart feel good. Of course, we're not doing it to get praise or anything, but just to see, people love others when you're just being kind and showing kindness. And so we always do volunteer. I always do volunteer work because that is very important to me. It was important to me when I was a child. My mom would take us to do stew pot. So that's something that I would love to just continue with my children. And I also volunteer at the local library. I used to read to the children on Wednesdays where they would have story time. So if you have a local library, that would be great, and that would also give you a chance to see other homeschool families and interact with them. And again, back to community, add to your community. So I always want to plan volunteer time with my children as well. And sometimes that can be planned. Sometimes it's okay, I see this opportunity. I just saw it in the newspaper. I just saw it on the news. And instead of doing this and this on this day, we're going to go volunteer as well. And that's the freedom of homeschooling. You plan just so that you can have something in place, but it always can be pushed to the side or delayed so that something else, if it comes up, you can just go ahead and get it done.
Okay, so this was all so good, and clearly you are a planner, which I'm not surprised by because former teacher, same thing, former teacher. Like I created my whole curriculum when I taught fifth grade math. Like I had to plan, there was no option. And you started like your very last sentence, you started to get into this, like that's the freedom of homeschooling, but also like that's the power of planning. And I would love for you to go a little bit deeper because you are such a planner. And not that I'm trying to convince people, but on the sly, I kind of am trying to convince people that like planning is really important. And to your point, just because you plan doesn't mean now all of a sudden your homeschool is like rigid and not fun and not exciting. I think actually the opposite. So I would love to hear from you though, because they're going to hear from me. Like I'm going to say it because that's like what my whole homeschooling platform business is about is like, we need a plan, we need to prep, we need to be prepared because our children's education is that important. Okay, I'm going to stop because I could go on and on. I want to hear from you. Like all this planning is so great. Like you mentioned so many good things. Thank you for the resources. Thank you for sharing not only how you're planning, academics, but even volunteering, things that are important to you. You're adding in your values there. But like, what's the importance of planning? And from a personal experience, how has that impacted you in your homeschooling? Because I think that's what people really can connect and relate to is like, oh, I see like how it really plays out for her and how it could play out for me, if they choose to plan. At the end of the day, it's their decision. But I think that some folks maybe are scared to plan or like feel overwhelmed by planning and don't really see the importance of it. So I'd love to hear that from you.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about planning and the importance of planning and the freedoms that come with planning for your homes. I know that every family has their own dynamics. They know how they want to run things. They all have their own different schedules. They know what they want. They basically have a vision for their family for homeschooling. And that's where planning comes into play. Now, as I said before, just because you plan and you have everything scheduled out, it does not mean that that is written in stone. It's basically just a visual of what we could do. This is just a template, but we can change it around at any time, and we can substitute or delete if we see that it's not working for us, right? So I told you before that I was a middle school science teacher, and there were times where I have had, because we always had to submit our lesson plans that Friday before the next week. And so I would have everything planned out, including worksheets, what videos we're going to watch to accompany our lessons, everything. But then there were some times I would come into my classroom and I would read the room. I would see that today there's something going on. My children don't need to do any work today. We just need to talk. We just need to communicate. For an example, I was teaching during the Sandy Hook, and I saw that my children just needed to talk. They just needed to talk. There was a day, there was no work. We were just going to communicate our thoughts, our feelings, and everything, talk through it, and then you were released to go to the next class. And I'm saying that because we can do the same thing in our home. Sometimes it's not a day to do work that day. Sometimes our children just need to relax and just tell us what's on their minds, or just this is the day we're just going to spend extra time. We're just going to spend extra time together as a family. We may take out a Monopoly game. We may go outside and play basketball together, or it may have rained a day. And my youngest, there were times where he would just go and play slip and slide in the mud puddle. You know, it's just nothing is written in stone. It just works according to the dynamics of your family. Another thing, it may be a doctor's appointment. So you may just, hey, we're just going to use this workbook, or we may discuss a topic on the way and we just use it as like a think piece. And so it promotes oral communications with your children. So when it comes to planning, you're looking at the overall year. What am I going to do this year with my children? What is the end goal for this year? What do I want them to look like or think like or talk like at the end of this year? And it's not just what you want. You have those discussions with your children when they're old enough. Now, of course, when they're in the preschool age, the elementary age, you know that the end goal of that year, you want them to recognize their letters. You want them to be able to know the letter sounds. You want them to be able to write the letters. So we're going a little bit past that for the older students. What do you want to learn this year? What is it that you're interested in? So a good way to do this, you can buy a planner, and I see that Erica, you have a planner on your site for sale. Would be excellent for parents to see, at a glance. You see the weeks, you see the months, you can write in your plans, but also, a notebook as well. You just write out your thoughts, write out the field trips that you would like to take. Okay, so if you have a museum that's in your area, and if they have an exhibit coming up, maybe in the spring, maybe you can form lessons around the exhibits. And that way you can get out of the house and you can meet other families that may be visiting the museum around that time as well. So it's a great way to meet new people. Another way with planning, not only are you planning field trips, but now it's budgeting is being tied in. How much do we want to spend on curriculum? Are we going with a big box curriculum this year, or are we going to piece little things together? We used to have a Books a Million in our area, and of course it's closed down now. But my children and I, we would go, and that would be a field trip because, of course, it was so relaxed in the store, and they would find their favorite books. We would just sit down, they would read, or they would play with the toys. The people knew us there, and that's another great thing about being a homeschool family, because you get to know those people in your community. They know you by name or by face. They'll say, hey, friend, and hey, friend, might not ever know your name, but they know our faces and they're happy to see us and do little extra perks for the children. So, anywho, we're in Books a Million, we're reading, and then I have a chance to look at the curriculum and see what do I want here that can actually excite my children to learn or to dive deeper in a certain area. So that's part of planning. How much money are you willing to spend when you want to dive deeper? And of course, you can get things for free. There are free online resources as well. And I don't want you to think that free means less quality. There are things that are being given away at the end of co-ops, homeschool co-ops. There are books and complete curriculums that families give away because they know I've been in your shoes. I know it can get expensive, especially if you have, I'm in Mississippi, and some of us have 6, 7, even 10 kids. So it can be expensive. You buying curriculum for each child. So some give things away. So again, you are planning your budget as well for the school year to see how much you want to spend. You're planning outings. You're planning each week or each month, especially if you do unit studies. And again, it's fun and planning because we can see, oh, we have extra time here, or we have time to just push this to the side and use this another day because I see that a play is coming into town this month, or they're going to have the orchestra is going to play and it's lining right up with what we're learning about instruments and music. So instead of us doing a final, we'll go here, and when we get there early, as the orchestra is setting up, I can just ask you, okay, what is this instrument? What is that instrument? Point it out. And that can be an oral exam, right? So again, planning is really fun. I love to plan because then when I pick my curriculum, when I'm making their schedules, when I'm planning out everything for the year, I get excited because it's like we're going into a new chapter. We're going even deeper into the education, and I see that my children are being excited about it as well, especially if you get to go to a classroom aids kind of store, and you can go in and get kits by kits, like science kits, STEM kits, manipulatives, anything, and they get to have a choice. So always include your children when you're planning for the school year, because it's going to make them feel like, you know what, it's not just them pushing things on me, it's me being involved in these things that I like as well. I also believe that planning keeps you motivated. It keeps a certain facet of accountability in your life, because you know that even if I push some things to the side, even if I feel like, okay, I'm going to substitute this or we're going to delete this out of the plans, I still have an end goal. I still have something that I'm reaching towards for my family. And I keep saying I, but my husband, children are included. But because I'm basically heading the things as far as the teaching goes, that's why I continue to say I, because my husband plays a huge part again with the budgeting, with the field trips, especially the budgeting. Because, like I said before, he was like, okay, we can't go to all these activities. We need to kind of step back and see what is important, what we're going to do, and then we're going to have to cancel some things. Planning also includes, are your children going to be in extracurricular activities? Are they going to play sports this year? Are they going to be in any type of clubs or groups this year? If they have, for example, we have the organization CHECK I spoke of earlier, and CHECK again means Christian Home Educators Connection, and it's here in Mississippi, and I know that there are other areas around the United States, but they have basically socials that they have for the children according to their grade levels. And so grades 7 through 12 have events, the middle school 6 through 8 have events. Then you have some just for the seniors and the juniors. Of course, it's all parent led, but with the events, some are drop off events, most of them are drop off events, and you have parents who volunteer, and a lot of the times it's paid. It's a paid event. And so even with that, with all the classes that you'll be teaching or the co-ops that you'll be sending your children off to, these extracurricular activities, these group activities, and these socials, you have to plan to see, okay, are we going to go to one paid event per month? Are we going to go at least 2 or 3 per month? Or are we just going to have to miss out on some things? So again, that also goes into with budgeting. As far as sports, again, when you're homeschooling, you have to understand that this is not a public high school or middle school. Everything comes out of pocket. All travels, all hotels, all the fees you have to pay. So again, we know that we want our children to have fun. We want them to experience a childhood where they can experience many things with their friends, but we also want to pull it in and pull things back into focus. What's more important here, but what can they also do to have a little fun as well? So you don't want to, just join everything because so and so they are doing everything, but you want to stay within budget. You want to stay within budget and still have fun. Another part of planning, as I said before, as you're dealing with curriculum and seeing if you're going to do online resources, you also want to check and see if you want to join co-ops. I know, like I said, I was a biology major, so I know I had to take up to calculus when I was in college. Some parents, they don't have the knowledge that can help their children with higher level math. And I know that math is always like a problem with certain people, right? So as you're looking at the subjects that your children are in, especially if they're going to high school in the upper grades, then you might want to outsource that particular class and find co-ops that will teach that class and see if that also fits in your budget. At one point in time, I taught in a co-op, and it was just one small fee, but the parents can break it down into 10 payments over the 10 months that I taught. And so that's easier for your budget. And it's easier, especially if you can find a discount or ask if they can do a discount if you have multiple children that will also be in the co-op. So again, planning is looking at every small detail just so that nothing can catch you off guard. And if it does catch you off guard, at least you have a plan in place that can keep you still on the same path that you're trying to get to toward the goals for your family. So I just want to add this in too. My children and I always taught them that you can always have fun for free, right? So whenever there are new restaurants in town, whenever there are new stores coming to town, we always try to go and be one of the first people there because it's always a celebration. Not too many years ago, we actually got a Walmart in our town, right? And so there was a big celebration where the middle school band came. There were people who came to speak, and they were giving away a lot of things. And then they had this huge sheet cake. And so my children were one of the first ones in line for the sheet cake, but that was by happenstance because where we were standing, the cake was behind us, and we didn't know that they would give it to everybody who was there. We thought it would just be for the workers. But it's a great way for the community leaders again to see the families there, recognize them, and then certain things happen. They will always know your face. When we got the Chick-fil-A, and it tells you how small our town is. When we got our Chick-fil-A, we were some of the first ones there, and they gave away free gifts and ice cream and stuff to the kids. They got a little cow. So it's always good to just go visit so that they can see just how fun it is just to be out into homeschool. Because even when one of my children, like one, he's in college, he can say, Mom, I remember, if I could be homeschooled again, we would be doing this right now and I wouldn't be in class. So there are fun ways to have fun with your family as you homeschool. And there's just a small snippet from my family. So how has planning impacted me? Number one, it is a great challenge because I have to make sure that each child's educational needs are taken care of. And so when my husband and I plan, we have to make sure by the end of the year, this is what we want to see, where the child should be. And for those of you who are new to homeschooling, I know with our homeschool group, we do testing. They take the hour test of basic skills. It is done at a church, and the parents volunteer, and different parents are over different age groups, and we give the children a test. I think it's over a period of 2 or 3 days, and you get your scores back to see where your children are. And so if you have not considered that, I think that would be great as well, because you always want to have some type of measurement, some type of benchmark to test and measure where your children are. Of course, we're not trying to compete with others, but we just want to make sure that they get where they should be for their age or their grade level. And so as I get the test scores back for my children, then I can see their weaknesses, their strengths, and it boosts the morale, if I can say that, for our homeschoolers to say, you did such a great job. I know one of my sons, when he was tested, he was only in the fifth grade, and he scored like eighth grade level, ninth grade level for certain things, and it predicted that he would, score high on his ACTs, but he had a third grade level in math. And I'm being transparent here, so why am I telling you this? He didn't finish. So when he saw the math, he took out his scratch sheet of paper. He worked every problem the way he would work it at home. And tying that back to preparation, I never timed my children. I never timed them on their assignments. And so he was very, well, not very, but he was a little frustrated because he was like, third grade? I make A's on my stuff I do. And I was like, son, it's not your fault. That's my fault because I never timed you all on your assignments. I always let you take your time on things. And so it has changed the way that I prepare because now I can give time tests. Now, we have had a Becca workbooks and that has timed assignments in it, but I've never done it. And so some things as a parent, even though you prepare, there are some things that you will bump into along the way that you can say, oh, I didn't think to do that. Nobody's perfect because again, we're all learning on this journey of homeschooling our children. And so when you see that, hey, I forgot something to teach or to do something with my kids, then you can always go back and take that as a learning experience. Okay, now I can go back and I can now remember to time them so that next time they take these standardized tests, they can complete it and know that you have so much time per question. So that helped me as well when I look back at the end of the year and I go over everything and just a little feedback. We talk with the children. Me and my husband discuss things, and he always say he wants the children to have more vocabulary. He loves learning new words, and so he's always saying, I want them to do spelling tests. I want them to do vocabulary. And so even when they're in high school, I want that to continue. And so as a parent, when I'm planning, again, I try to include everyone in the home. I try to tie it all together, and I look at places where, hey, I started strong at the beginning of the year in this part, but I slacked up a little. And then I'm going to have to make sure that in this area, I cannot slack. It's almost like when you were a public school teacher and you know Christmas break is right there and you're tired. And it's like, ooh, everybody, we just gonna get some crossword puzzles and we're gonna do these puzzles. We're gonna do these word search puzzles. Oh, here go a color by number sheet. But no, we have to stick with it because it truly lies on you. Everything will fall back on you. Of course, children learn at their own pace. They they play a part as well. But as far as giving the information and making sure that they have everything, it's all on the parents. We're the stewards. So we have to make sure that we don't get too lax and complacent in certain areas. We know that had we been consistent and continued strong, we would have had a better outcome than what we have. And again, for planning, just have fun. Just have fun. Yes, we're going to do this. Even when you plan your lessons, make sure that not only are they being educated, but they're having fun. Now, I can say when I used to be a teacher, the kids say, are we having fun today? And I would tell them, my job is not for you to have fun. My job is to educate you. But while I'm educating you, it could be fun, but it is not here just for your entertainment. So when you're home with your kids, you're trying to make sure that they are being educated, they're actually learning, but you can make it fun as well. So let's say our children are small and they're learning about something in science. They're learning lung capacity, but you may not say lung capacity. You may say, how strong are your lungs? You can blow up balloons and make funny faces and say, okay, let's see whose balloon can, how many puffs it takes me to blow up a balloon. And so you're making funny faces and they're laughing. The balloon is flying out of their mouths, going everywhere. They're having fun, but they don't understand you're still learning because this is how strong your lungs are. And I actually had a worksheet that I found, a PDF that I found on Google that my sons and I did that, and I have pictures. We just enjoyed that. So always try to find an element where you can really enjoy yourselves. My children love Beyblades. I don't know if you've ever seen those or heard of those, but they're like spinning tops. And they play with them so much. And every time we would give them money, they would go and buy Beyblades from Walmart. So what I did was I said, how can I incorporate this in a way that they can learn? So we would take rulers, we would drop them from a certain height to see if that would affect their speed. We would have stopwatches and we would just let them, I forgot what it's called. I think it's a burst when they would burst, when they would hit each other and then they would collapse or whatnot. And so I would have a stopwatch and they would time how long they could spend alone, and then they would time how long it would take for them to burst. We would also weigh them. Does the weight affect how strong they are or how long they spend? So they're learning while they're playing. They also like Legos. So one of my children, they make those Lego movies. And so those stop motion, this is what it's called, stop motion Lego movies. And so in that, he's learning how to do media. And so my husband bought an online media course. And so, and he also bought one of some, I forgot what's the word I'm looking for. He bought the material needed for you to do like YouTube videos, and the word just cannot come to me right now. And so while he's learning media technology, he's also using the technology to film his own stop motion videos. And so every season he'll come out with a couple of episodes, and that takes patience because it's like 5,000 pictures to make all of this go. So again, that we have the student-led learning there. We let him go in that, and then we're making sure that we pour into that. If we see that there's something he's really good at, there's something that comes to him with ease, then we pour into that, and that also becomes part of the curriculum. That's what digital media. He's interested in digital media as well. I just want to add one more thing when it comes to planning, especially for high school. I spoke a little bit about it before when I talked about creating transcripts for my older three. But when I plan for high school, go backwards. So I asked them what colleges or universities are they interested in. And then I look at what the requirements as a freshman to for admissions. And then I look at what the requirements are. Is it 3 sciences, 3 maths, 3 social studies? How many electives? Do they need community service hours? What all do they need in order to hopefully gain admission into this college or university? And so that's how we plan out their high school years. And it has helped. In Mississippi, when you create a transcript, and I do create transcripts for families in case you don't want to do the hard work and you want convenience, I am here for that. You also have to make sure that there is a place for it to be notarized because it is a legal binding document. So please always make sure that someone has looked over it, checked over it, that the grades and everything on there are correct. As far as the classes, again, we're going by their interests. What do you want to do? What is it that you're really good in that comes to you at ease and that you don't mind doing this for the rest of your life? And of course, they change their minds over time, but as long as we get those general education courses out of the way, like your sciences, your histories, your maths, so in your Englishes, because I think they have to go up to English 2 now. But if my child is a good writer, we may want to add creative writing courses in there as well. So that's part of doing the planning for high school in your homeschool years. Also, if they have taken sports and they want to go into college and play sports. If they have played sports during homeschooling, try to get with the coach and see if they can, make a tape. And I know I'm telling my age, but if they can make a tape of them with all their highlights so that they can submit it to the coaches. And there are a lot of rules for the NCAA. Just make sure you have all your paperwork together. So again, always have a paper trail. Everything that you do with your children, document, 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 so it can be easier for you to, if you're missing one or two things, than to have to do a whole lot of things at one time. Again, community service hours, if they are involved in any extracurricular activities. Our homeschool has a beta club, so make sure you keep records of those points. What if you're involved in church and they have different volunteer activities, or you go to like a food pantry? Make sure that you have all those hours logged in so that it can be easy to document, to give to the admissions when it's time. With my children, we keep a portfolio. So I always make sure that all of their work is in the portfolio. And we, at the end of the school year, I make sure that they go back and they pull samples from their previous year to place into their portfolio. And I need samples from each course that we took that year. And it doesn't have to be everything with an A. You just randomly pull, you place it in your portfolio for each subject. And that's so when the college admissions ask for it, if they ask for it or if they need a portfolio, they can see how rigorous and how challenging the courses were. They can see examples of my child's work. They can see how they have gradually increased in knowledge, over the course of the years. And so I think that's a great thing that if you have not considered before, please make sure that your children have a portfolio. Even if the college does not need it, at least you can look back and see the work, and they can look back and see, look at how much I've accomplished over my high school years. And even include a portion in there for pictures to show, look at what I was involved in. Look at, like, you kind of make it a scrapbook, have a scrapbook section in there as well to see the field trips. What if they had to do presentations? You can place that in there. So you're not only just planning, elementary, now they know the letter A, but now all the way to high school, and you can see everything in one spot. Now, again, if you are doing a portfolio, you keep the elementary and the middle school years in a separate portfolio. But once they reach ninth grade, you make sure, and maybe eighth grade too, because I know some states accept some eighth grade courses. Then you place those in the portfolio for college admissions. But for your elementary and middle, it'll be more like a scrapbook, so they can look back over the years to see all that they've accomplished.
Okay, you clearly can tell that planning is your thing and that you plan a lot, because let me just repeat back what I heard as a summary of the reasons why you should plan based off of what you said. Okay, so first and foremost, you mentioned you having a plan actually allows you to be flexible. Having a plan allows you to budget. Having a plan allows you to find community, be in community, all those things. Having a plan allows you to find the best materials for your children. It allows you to include your children in the planning and in their education. It keeps you motivated. It allows you to find extracurricular activities and free things. Those are just the things I captured. I feel like you said so much more too. Let's talk about this free stuff because it's hilarious that you were talking about this. I actually got a year's worth of free smoothies, actually 2 sets of a year's worth of free smoothies. Okay, I'm trying to feed the 1-year-old, and I thought because he was eating he'd be quiet, but he found a fly swatter and he's waving it around screaming as he's eating. So I have to keep stopping. But okay, I got the free smoothies because there was a new tropical smoothie opening up. And if you were the first 50 people in line, you got a year's worth of free smoothie, which was like 52, one per week was what it was. But I used those. And so I needed that reminder to look out for new stuff because they do things like that. That is hilarious. All right. So clearly you covered planning. If there's anything that you do that you did not mention to stay organized, definitely please share that. And then I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about your consulting. Amos Homeschooling Consulting. What do you do? How did you get started? How do you help people? Share any other organization tips and then about your consulting.
So you asked about Amos Homeschool Consulting, and that is a business that I created, and it was formed in March of this year, but I put it online in June or July of 2025. So what do I do? Amos Homeschool Consulting helps parents to homeschool. It helps to unlock learning and empower families. That's our tagline. I'm here whether this parent has just started on the homeschool journey or they're looking to refine their purpose, because sometimes we start strong, but then we kind of fizzle out and we need someone to come along to just help us to get back going, almost like our personal cheerleader. I help to create custom academic plans for the dynamics of your family. I also help parents to understand the homeschool laws for their state and help with any documentation that is needed. I prepare professional high school transcripts. So whether you're a family who is trying to dual enroll, enter into dual enrollment, or you're trying to go into college after graduation, I'm there to help prepare that transcript. But on the flip side, there are some parents who have done 1 or 2 years of homeschool in high school and say, I feel like this is too challenging for me. I want to put them back into the public school system. And I can also help to prepare the transcripts for that, because sometimes parents place their children back into public school and they have nothing to show that these are the courses that my child took. And so the high school counselors have to kind of do testing to see where to place the child. So I help with that as well. And one-on-one support and coaching, just so that you can get a peace of mind about your child's education. So how did I get started? I was always helping people. So, of course, I already said that I was in the public school system. I was a middle school science teacher. I do have a master's of arts in education, but it's in elementary education. I did some substitute teaching for a while before I became a public school teacher. Became a public school teacher for years, and then I quit to homeschool. So when I began to homeschool, I took those qualities that I learned as a teacher, especially about planning, keeping paperwork, a paper trail, just document. It's like I have a knack for that. And when I started to meet other homeschool parents, I would ask certain things and they were like, no, I don't do all that. And I'm like, the laws for Mississippi, even though there's very low regulation for the state of Mississippi according to the homeschool laws, they can change it anytime, right? They can change it anytime. And so you have to be prepared just in case you have your stuff available. And so I began to help those parents who were near to me and help them to get started with homeschooling. And they were like, JeTua, you really can help other people. Like, you have a special gift in this area. And through much prayer, it encouraged me to just go out, put myself out there to help others. And so again, if you are new, brand new, I am here to assist and help you to learn according to your family. Because again, sometimes we watch YouTube videos and we see other families and they're just on point and it just look like it's so much fun every day. Like, there's no fear there, there's no nervousness. You spend your money on all the right curriculum, everything. But that's not for every family, right? That's not every family story. And so I come along according to how you all work and to help you to design homeschooling the way that would fit the needs of your family. So in addition to the transcripts and the coaching and the academic planning, I also plan to host different workshops in person and online for parents who need the extra help. Because sometimes, we can hear things over the phone, but sometimes we need to be in person, or we need to go more in depth. Like when you hold a conference, you can only hit different things and then move on. But some things that they really feel a need, that they need more information about, I plan to help them in those areas. And I also plan to release different PDF packets or workbooks for parents as well to help with science. My undergrad degree is in biology, and so those science packets can help them to learn more about science, because sometimes like math and science, parents have a difficulty explaining certain concepts, and I believe that my resources can help them in the area of science.
Okay, thank you for sharing about your consulting. I absolutely love what you're doing, because sometimes it's just necessary to have like a sounding board, someone who's been in it before, who knows what they're doing, who has proven results with their children, and just to be that support for other moms. So I love that so much. Okay, getting towards the last couple questions I have for you, but I'm curious to know about, how do you balance homeschooling plus running a consulting business? Because I know there's plenty of moms who either would like to, or, are doing work and homeschooling. And I think, like, from my experience with consulting, there's some freedom and flexibility there too. So I'd love to just hear about that balance around homeschooling all the things you do to homeschool, planning and building community and all of the things, field trips, plus your consulting business. What does that balance look like for you?
Okay, so as far as balance when it comes to Amos Homeschool Consulting and Amos Academy, which is the name that we gave our homeschool, it is going pretty well. And I say that because Amos Homeschool Consulting is literally being built from the ground up. So it's still in its foundational stages right now. But I was working with people behind the scenes, right? So I was working with people behind the scenes, and now I'm opening up my services to the public. As of right now, I, I just had an event recently. I had to plan for that in the middle of homeschooling summer school, which was the math for my children. And I can say early in the mornings, I would tell them, look, I'm going to work on this and we're going to start school at this time. And so on Tuesdays and Fridays, we started school like around 8:39. But for Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we did it around 1 o'clock. So I basically made a schedule that could help me to ease into both really well. So in the mornings, on the days that I work on Amos Homeschool Consulting, I will set a timer and say I'm going to work only during these times. And that's me planning social media posts, that's planning some upcoming products that I am trying to get together, that's planning the website. Should I take certain things down? Should I put it back up? And then just having a trial run with friends who are interested to make sure that I'm answering questions completely. Because, we all have something in our brain and how we think we're answering, how we think we're giving an answer across. But it's really causing confusion to the people who are listening. So I have to make sure that my thoughts in my head are communicated well when it exits my mouth. And then once I get finished with that, I kind of calm down a little bit and then prepare my mind to homeschool. Now, I could homeschool in the mornings, but again, this is summertime, and then get a chance to do it in the afternoon, which is what we do the certain days that I already told you, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, where I do it in the afternoon. On Tuesdays and Fridays, I do it in the mornings. And I tell my children, okay, we're going to get started around this time. After breakfast, after devotional, we get started. And then after I finish with class with them, then, I just go into my office and I try to, you know, look at my calendar and see what things that I have to do. Now, of course, this is just because it's summertime. When it's time for school, it will not be done that way. When it is time for school, I will set my timer specifically for maybe an hour and a half, and I'm only working during that time. Because like you said, when it's consulting, it's flexibility. On my website, I have where parents can schedule, a time, and those times are in the afternoon because, of course, I homeschool my children in the morning times when it comes during the actual school season. It's during the morning time. But I believe it's going to go well because, again, you have to just make sure you plan well, you schedule well, and then you just keep priorities.
Okay, yes. Okay, so I got a good understanding of how you're balancing the two and being able to set timeframes for homeschooling, set timeframes for consulting, and really sticking to those. I love the how you mentioned a couple times like using a timer because you know, work could fill as much time as you give it, right? So if you're like, I only have 60 minutes for this, I have an hour and a half, 90 minutes, that's it. And then I'm done and I have to get to homeschooling or move on to the next thing. So I like that tip that you shared there with that. I know you just had your first event. I believe it was like a vending event for Amos Homeschooling Consulting. So I want to hear about that. How did it go? What did it look like? How did you get that event? Like, how did you even find it and get accepted? Or, what it did that look like, especially for anyone who is looking to be featured at similar events? But then, like, what did you talk about at your vending table? How did you set it up? Any initial results or things like that have come from it? I want to hear all the things. So let me.
Okay, so I'm very excited to tell you about my vending event. So every year in the month of July, we have what's called Check Kickoff. Check stands for Christian Home Educators Connection. I believe I said that earlier. And it's basically opening up the community to the homeschool world. So for those who are interested or those who are already homeschooling, they come and they will, first when you walk in, the vendor tables are basically all of the clubs that we have. So you have like the SGA, you have the spelling bee, you have the reading fair, you have the science fair, and then you go down the hall, and in the hallway there were a lot of colleges and universities who, have homeschool children who come to their universities. So it's not that many, but those who we basically have used, or most of our children have attended those colleges and universities, they are there. So you have a few community colleges and a few universities that show up as well to try to get some of the kids to come their way, right? And then you have another hallway. You enter into the gym, and there are the other vendors who are basically resources for those who homeschool. And so that's where I come in, Amos Homeschool Consulting. So again, this event is held every year, but this is the first year that I came as an actual vendor for this event. For my table, I wanted to keep it simple, so I ordered a table banner from Etsy with my design, and then I had tablecloth to protect underneath my table runner, and I purchased three picture frames, 8x10s, and in each I had something that told about the business. Now, one, it had the QR code, and it was basically, if the people come by and scan, then they can immediately book a one-on-one consultation. The second frame, I had like a snapshot of my life, who I was, and then the third one had the services that I offered. I also had a giveaway basket because I believe that also gets people's attention. And the giveaway basket was basically for any child for middle school and high school years. It basically caters to them. And I know one important thing I put in were those lights, those neon lights that the children like to put in their rooms, because my children had some of those too. And I was like, this would be something fun that they can, to decorate their rooms with. So anywho, I basically placed my application in to be a vendor, and it was accepted. And we were told the day and the date that we can come and set up, and the times that we would have to be there, and then to take down. For anyone who wants to be a vendor at any event, number one, I would always choose an organization or an event that lines up with your beliefs or your ethics, so that you can attract the customers that you want, if you get my drift. So because I'm a homeschool, I would go somewhere where I know plenty of homeschool families may be. So that it was very fun. As I set up, I'm looking around and looking at the tables because they had labels on all the tables around me. So I watched for faces that were familiar to me and for new faces, because I always meet a friend. Overall, I believe the event turned out great. I I received information from people who will be a resource, because I decided to also place a resource on my site, a resources page. And I believe that these people will be helpful in me directing families to their services as well. For an example, it was a woman beside me who had a speech pathologist, who was a speech pathologist, and she had a business that helped homeschool parents, especially for those who have IEPs. And so I would think that would be great, because parents, you don't have to be in a public school system to get your child the help that they need. You can be at home as well and find the people who can help assist you and your family in whatever needs that your child may have. As far as potential customers, I did have a sign-up sheet. So in order to be entered into the giveaway, the sign-up sheet was there so that if you came by and signed up, you were automatically entered into the drawing. and we used a random number generator to put the numbers in, and so that it can fairly choose a number. And so the person who won was actually somebody that I knew, and so that was great because it was a lot of new faces that came up to my table, and it would have been hard to kind of remember the name, but of course I had the numbers. When customers came to my table, I introduced myself and told them who I was, and I told them the services that I offered. And because we are in the state of Mississippi, I also let them know that I can also educate them on the laws of Mississippi and point them in the right direction in their homeschooling journey. Because I know it can be scary, because all parents want to make sure that they do a good job with their children. They want to make sure that, hey, am I doing this right? I don't want to fail my child. I want to make sure that they learn what they're supposed to learn. I don't want them to fail in any area. And so that's where my services come in, to be a homeschool startup support system. And then I met some women there who actually had their own school. And so I gave them my information. And one of the women, she actually used to be an administrator. I think she has an endorsement for assistant principal. So she has her own school in a town near me. And so I told her, I was endorsed in biology. I did middle school science. And so she said she would call me, but I told her I am not teaching. I am not going to teach, but I can help, because she just extended her school to high school. And I told her that I can assist with the transcripts should parents need that service. And so, like I said, it turned out to be a great event where my table was very busy, very busy, busier than I thought it would be, but I am a talker. I really am a talker. And so it was good meeting new people. And some people would tell me, what I wish I knew about you last year. But of course, I was helping people, quote unquote, under the table. And now that I put my services out for the public, I can't help those who just graduated seniors last year. But for those who would need my services in the future, I am here to help and assist. And creating custom transcripts is just one of the services. Again, I help them with curriculum planning. I help with the custom transcripts. I help with middle school science coaching. And I would tell them, if there's a concept in science that you don't understand, then I can help break it down to you so that you can have a smoother transition when it's time for you to teach your child. So you're not teaching from frustration or lack of knowledge. Now you are confident because you know it, and now you can teach your child with ease. And so a lot of parents were saying, okay, I need this service, I need this service. And so afterwards, it was my plan to reach out. I haven't reached out to everyone, but just to reach out, to touch bases, because we can easily forget, a face. We can forget who the person was that we spoke to or what services another person has provided. But I also received an email from the organization, from Check, and they are going to place on their page a resource for those who were the vendors. And so if the families did forget, or if they lost their papers or anything like that, that they did receive at the kickoff, they would be able to contact us, look through the site, and find our services. And I love that we have that website, because there's a calendar. The calendar is always full. We always look and see what we're going to do for that month or for the months ahead. We always like to plan ahead. But this would be great, because sometimes you need resources at a glance for parents. It's just more convenient that way, because sometimes you can have just a plethora of information and some things won't really work for you. But if you know that you've already talked to someone at an event and you've heard and you've seen this person up front and they explain, then it's easy for me to say, yes, I want this service. But yes, everything went well. I was very excited. There are some things in the planning. I don't want to say too much right now, but I'm excited. Erica, I'm really excited, because I know this is something that I have been planning. Like I said, I've been helping people behind the scenes for years, and now I'm stepping out, and I'm just praying that, God blesses and I help as many families as possible.
Yes, I'm so excited for you. That sounds so amazing. From the setup, you're like, I was simple, and then you named like all these awesome things you had, like the QR code and the tablecloth and the pull-up banner. And then to the fact that you have made contacts, you got people's names and things like that. That is so, so good. I used to coach ed consultants. So, folks who go into schools to consult, I used to coach them on business. And one of the things I used to always tell them is like, once you get people's information, they are a hot lead. So follow up with them. So you should definitely take those lists, whether it's a call, if you have their phone numbers or emails, and check in with them. But it sounds like you already have some really good things in motion from this. So congratulations on the first event. And I know there's many more to come with many more great results from them. So good. All right. We've talked about so many things. Is there anything else you want to share that we didn't get to talk about? If so, please go ahead and share that. And then also share how folks can stay in touch with you, where they can find you online. And then we'll wrap up. Thanks.
So if anyone wants to keep in touch with me or find me, I just created an Instagram account. It is Amos Homeschool Consulting, or you type that in and it'll just send it to you, because sometimes they, cut stuff off at the end. I am on TikTok as Amos Homeschool Consulting. You can reach out to me via email, amishomeschoolconsulting@gmail.com. You can also visit the website, Amos Homeschool Consulting amishomeschoolconsulting.com. Let me start that over. So I really had a great time with this interview. This was my first time since launching my business. So I want to thank you for the opportunity. If anyone would like to continue to communicate with me, reach out, have any questions, especially if you live in the Mississippi area, my email is amishomeschoolconsulting@gmail.com. My website is amishomeschoolconsulting.com. I have TikTok. You can type in Amos Homeschool Consulting, but it's amos.homeschool.c. That's what shows up as my ID or whatnot, but it's Amos Homeschool Consulting. And I just created an IG account, and it is Amos Homeschool as well. So search for Amos Homeschool Consulting as well, and you will find me there. I hope anything that I have said and everything that I have said has actually helped someone, because there's no reason for us to say anything or even have this discussion if it has not edified someone in any way. Because, sometimes we get to talk and I feel like I'm just yapping, but I really want to help people to know that they can homeschool. I want people to enjoy their journey. I want them to know that this is the best thing that you can do, even if you have to leave it alone at some point. You got a chance to really just learn with your child, because we don't want people to feel bad or feel guilty if they have to send their kids back to public school or charter school or private school or whatever the case. But since you are here, we are glad that you are here, and we want you to enjoy your time with your children, learning, watching them develop, watching them actually get it. Like, that's the best part of homeschooling to me. And I just wish everyone a happy school year. Just have a happy school year. You don't have to, go by the book on a lot of stuff, because each day is like a new journey. So enjoy. And again, I thank you, Erica. This has been a blast.
Okay, I'm obsessed with your last words. Thank you. Thank you for adding all that. It's so true. And I know that someone listening to the very end of this is going to be grateful for you saying those things too. So I appreciate you for all that you've shared and being vulnerable and open and honest and giving us all the gems and pointers and tips and things. So I'm grateful for this conversation. I'm excited to stay in touch. This Boxer is not closing, so feel free to reach out and box me all the time, because I'm going to miss our conversations now. And we'll also stay in touch on social media, of course. But again, thank you. Everyone, go follow JeTua on all the social medias. Reach out to her. And thanks again. Bye.